Happy Wednesday. I am Scott Simi. I'm the editor-in-chief of DroneDJ.com, and I am joined today by my two trusted senior editors, Ishvina Singh and Bruce Crumley. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, happy to be here.
Great. So we've got a lot of things to talk about. It's been actually a pretty newsy week in the drone world. And the latest big story is one that was published in the Financial Times the other day. And what it suggested, it claimed that there was a Department of Interior memo suggesting that the drones that are on something called the blue sUAS list, which is kind of a list of sort of approved drones for government and government agency use, that those drones were 8 to 14 times more expensive than other drones available on the market, and presumably referenced there to DJI because the Department of Interior had a very large fleet of drones and the majority of them were DJI. Ishvina, you covered this story. What did you think when you were reading it and the reaction that's been coming out?
Well, there's this thing that, it's not by chance that this memo has come out now or that Financial Times has gotten its hands on it. We are not sure from who the source is because, they don't mention it. And also the article is behind a paywall, but we did get a chance to look at it. And it quotes the memo that, by having only the blue UAS approved drones reduces the Department of Interior's sensor capabilities by a staggering 95%. So, the aircraft are designed for very specific Department of Defense missions. And by these specifications, the DOI is able to conduct only about 20% of its missions if it is to use only the blue sUAS approved drones, which is a great problem because, DI works is extremely important. They have to be there persistently and have to, give responses to emerging events like wildfires, earthquakes, volcanoes, floods, etc. And now they can only conduct emergency missions, which is, a controlled burning of wildfires using their existing fleet of drones. And on the price point also, on average, I think the DJI government edition drones cost somewhere around $2,100. And the sophisticated models in the blue sUAS program can go as high as $21,000. And I think the starting price is somewhere around $8,000, which is, of course, a great dent in the DOI's budget if it were to convert completely to blue sUAS drones.
And one of the interesting things about the approved drones on the blue sUAS list is that there's almost like a fast tracking process. If you're a government agency that would like to purchase one of these drones, there are sort of links and references to government grants and money up front that you can get. So it's very much focused on made in USA drones that meet Defense Department criteria in terms of flight time, in terms of cybersecurity, etc. One of the things that strikes me as odd about this story, and I'm going by memory here, but the Department of Interior had, I believe, around 800 drones, and it was roughly a year and a half ago that they made the decision to ground those drones based on cybersecurity concerns. So does it seem odd, Ishvina, that if the Department of the Interior is the first government agency, and to my knowledge, the only one that decided to ground this fleet of drones, largely DJI products, based on concerns about cybersecurity, that the very same department would now produce a memo saying, hey, these other drones that you're recommending are not as effective and they're way more expensive. Does it strike you as a little bit odd?
Okay, the first thing is that they were forced to, ground their fleet, and they have the largest fleet of civilian uncrewed aircraft systems in the US government. And yeah, I mean,
all right. One of the interesting things here as well is that after the Financial Times report came out, a group we've seen.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Ishvina froze, and I thought actually Ishvina might have frozen. But that's all right. Did you want to continue, Ishvina?
Yes, I just wanted to make one quick point. I mean, how do you bypass China's supply chain when you're making a drone anywhere in the world? They are everywhere. Even with the Blue sUAS list, the Department of Defense did its own audit for the supply parts of the drones that they have approved, and you found a lot of components that come from China. And primarily, it's the fuselage structures, electric motors, circuit boards. They all come from China.
Yeah, it is interesting, the whole made in USA and what that truly means. And, you know, the inference in some of what's been said and some of the actions that have been taken is that merely by being produced in China or having Chinese made components, that somehow presents a vulnerability or the potential for a cybersecurity leak. So, you know, but the rest of us are walking around with phones that are made in China, all sorts of technology made in China that connects to the internet and, you know, supposedly could also be sharing information. But those don't seem to be a concern the way drones are. Now, Bruce, you had noted that there was a response from an organization, I believe it's called the Drone Alliance or the American Drone Alliance, which represents some of the US-based drone manufacturers. And they kind of pushed back against this Department of Interior report that was in the Financial Times. And they had some pretty strong language. And what was your read when you saw that response, Bruce?
Well, from the extract that I saw, they basically, it was in two parts. The first very small part was this kind of shrill objection that our drones are too competitive, and they are too, you know, don't cost a lot. And then they jumped directly into this prolonged tirade, anti-China tirade that sounded more like something kind of out of the McCarthy era than, or at least an extreme period of protectionism than it did actually addressing the points. And the points is not, are there concerns over importing high-tech material from China or components from China that it could be, if something were amiss, used to steal data? The answer, of course, in that is yes. You know, we know China has been involved in some pretty underhanded dealings, and there's a very small distance one assumes between the state and even private businesses. That's not the point, though. Here, the point is that it's beyond that. It's okay. So Chinese drones have been banned by DOI use. Why are your drones so much more expensive? Why is the DOI itself saying, okay, fine, we're playing by the rules, but we can't play 95% of our playbook based on what's available? And the other thing about this is that it takes place within a longer, wider context that goes farther back in time than a lot of people remember anymore. And that is that, you know, what about the $500 army toilet seats? You know, the $500 hammers. You know, you heard about those for years and years and years, and you don't so much anymore because the polemics of taxation and, you know, and state spending has gone elsewhere. But I mean, this all factors into a procurement environment in which a lot of suppliers to the U.S. government have not been known, or at least distinguished themselves for being the best bargains on earth.
One of the things that has struck me in the last couple of years is that we see these allegations about DJI products and suggesting that they are not secure when it comes to data and cybersecurity. DJI has hired external people, the company called Booz Allen and others, to assess the quality of the drones and whether they are secure. There was also recently a report in the Hill publication suggesting that at least 2 of the models had been tested thoroughly and presented no cybersecurity threats. But, you know, people have picked up on this and repeat it over and over again, and DJI continues to present evidence it has gathered that suggests there is not a problem. But it's kind of like one of those situations where once an accusation has been leveled against you and it has sufficient media coverage, it's very difficult to try and push back against that. Ishvina, would you tend to agree with that?
Yeah, it's like they have kind of gathered a reputation, and that reputation now precedes them. So no matter what kind of evidence they present, this it's gonna stick with them.
Bruce, I'm not sure if you've been following that aspect of it, but do you have any thoughts you want to weigh in with?
Yeah, it does seem a bit unfair. Again, within the larger context of the DJI being obviously a Chinese company and operating underneath within the Chinese mixed market and communist government system, it is in a difficult position. And now that guns from the West have been turned on it, accusations, it's in a very difficult position to disclaim those. And it's in a way also, given the political environment in the U.S. and I'd say largely in the West, it's a bit like someone who's been accused of. I mean, I realize it's a terrible comparison, but of sexual harassment or even sexual predation. Once that accusation has been made, you defend yourself, you claim your innocence, but you've got half the world saying, well, if the accusations out there, it must be true, and that's not actually so. But nobody wants to take the risk of saying, well, presumption of innocence. And in this case with DJI, obviously there are a lot of corporate interests also out there fanning certain fires and trying to put others out. So it's a tough situation.
Now, Ishvina has been covering this field for a number of years, and so have I. And I've really noticed in the last couple of years, in particular, it used to be that we had kind of a system where all the companies that were in the drone world played nice. Where there weren't direct attacks on any other companies. And in recent years, we've seen both with DJI and the alleged cybersecurity issue, more and more of this kind of thing. Parrot, for example, when it launched the ANAFA USA product, basically just a little over a year ago, its promotions in advance of the launch said, don't buy Chinese drones. So we're seeing very kind of specific and targeted allegations and pushback between companies now that we never truly saw in the past. And my own read is that this is partly a reflection of the fact that the drone industry is growing so rapidly and there's a lot of money at stake. Ishvina, your thoughts on why we're seeing more of this kind of warfare?
I think it wasn't present before because that was the time when all the companies were trying to get social acceptance for the use of drones. And now that that's there, especially with COVID, so many more countries have opened up to drone use. India also changed its drone policy just this month. So now that the social acceptance is there, now it has become a war field for them. Now it's the survival of the fittest.
What do you think coming into this relatively, newish to this area, Bruce, when you see this kind of clashing between companies?
Well, I think in this case, it seems to be a fairly obvious example of, the world leader. Nobody contests that DJI is the world leader in pretty much in all ways, appearing to be weakened, not of its own accord, but having been kind of tripped up, stumbled. And, of course, when somebody stumbles in any sport, and business is something of a blood sport, you tackle them. You try to get them down, and you take the best opportunity to do that. At the same time, this is taking place within a global media environment in which things just get hyped and hyped and hyped and hyped. They may be true, they may not be true, they may be partially true, they may be nuanced, but they just get hyped and hyped and hyped and hyped, and it's hard to put out those flames once they get going. So again, DJI, in a way, it's hard not to feel sympathetic for them, because again, it's like the strongest player in the field stumbling and trying to keep his balance, and everybody else is out there, trying to trip him up.
I know that DJI has some comments that we're going to be receiving probably later today in reaction to the response from the Drone Alliance. So we'll look forward to a report from Ishvina on that probably later today. We're going to switch topics a little bit, and we're going to head directly over to Ishvina's world, which is in India, because India has traditionally had a very, I don't want to say tyrannical, but it has really clamped down on drones, and it's been very difficult to buy commercial products. It's been difficult for enterprise operators. And last week, we saw suddenly a big change. Ishvina, can you update us on what that change was?
Okay, the change is that India has scrapped its existing drone policy, which came out only 4 months ago. But what's even more important to note is the background, in which these regulations have come. Just days before the new draft policy was announced, there was a terror drone attack. And there have been regular sightings of drones in military locations after that also, but yet here we are. I mean, it seems like that government has truly realized the potential of drones, and there has been talk in the past of India being the drone capital of the world, and probably it's a step toward that. But now, no pilot license will be required for drones for nano drones and micro drones, so that's drones up to 2 kg, and for research and development organizations also. Earlier, even for R&D organizations, if they were to import the components or source it locally also and manufacture a drone and then get it to fly, there would be around some 25-26 forms that they would have to fill out. Now that number has been reduced to 6, so both for R&D and for commercial drone organizations, drone manufacturers. And at the same time, there has been a huge reduction in the licensing and certification fee also. And another thing is that government has made the process of transfer and deregistration of drones easier. The online system is being spruced up as we speak. And no flight permission will be required if you're flying up to 400 feet, just like it's in the US and many other parts of the world. And the yellow zone, I mean, the 400 feet is in the green zone, but in the yellow zone, which is the perimeter around the airports, that has been reduced from some 45 kilometers to 12 kilometers. So that's the basic highlight.
And what has the reaction been from the industry and from consumers? What have you heard at your end since this announcement was made?
They have been ecstatic. I mean, every person that I've talked to since then, be it a manufacturer or a service provider or an R&D organization, it's very buoyant. And the good part is that the government is asking for public feedback also. So there's like a 2-week period in which you can provide your feedback, for further iterations to this draft policy. And it's all very upbeat. The environment is very upbeat here.
Excellent. And one of the things, interestingly, we regularly receive comments, often messages via Facebook from consumers in India who want us to help them try to purchase a drone, because you can't go and buy a DJI product, for example, off the shelf in India. Do you anticipate that is going to change, Ishvina?
If that changes, that would be a very welcome step for Indian consumers, strictly from the point of view of reliability and affordability. But there are still some safety measures that the government is yet to lay out that every drone will have to have, including geofencing and probably no permission, no takeoff also. And if that is the case, if NPNT is still a requirement, DJI again would not be able to sell legally in India.
All right. Speaking of DJI, Bruce, you recently got your hands on a Mini 2 and went for your very first flight last week. Tell us what that was like for you and what your initial impression is as a brand new drone pilot.
Well, as I said, last week it was the first challenge was finding a place around here I could actually get it in the air. When I finally did that, got into a zone that was no longer the red color. I was just on the cusp of it. Had to actually walk a few meters farther than I had planned to. But I got into a kind of unpaved road between two fields and just basically did what I guess any neophyte would do, is just try to ease my way into it very conservatively, taking it not too high and not too far. And I was at about 2 meters high, then 4 meters high, then 10 meters high, and I was feeling pretty courageous. But I mean, essentially to answer the question directly, I have a feeling my sensation was the same as anybody who gets their hands on one of these products for the first time. That is just you immediately realize just how much more capacity and power this little creation has that you will ever, well, you may be able to master it one day, but that you can possibly let free in any short amount of time. I mean, it was just as I said, I didn't want to get too adventurous, especially since then you have that nightmare scenario in your head where you're you're flying it forward and you pull back the sticks and bring it back, and it just keeps going, and off into the distance. So, I didn't want to get too confident, but I just realized again, it's just, you can almost feel that it's kind of a corny thing to say, but you can almost feel the unused power that's sitting in there, waiting to be released once you get a little bit more confident, once you get a little bit more capable of knowing exactly everything it does. I mean, I know what it can do, I just can't make it do it, but and it probably can do it for me if I can figure that bit out as well.
I know a couple of people who have flown the Mini 2 as their very first drone, and the reaction is always kind of astonishment. People just can't believe the amount of technology that is packed into this tiny little machine that can transmit video from, I believe, up to 10 kilometers away using OcuSync 3. And I mean, when you think about it, for the price, it is pretty mind-blowing, and when you take your hands off the sticks, that thing just hangs there in space as though it's on a pedestal. When you took your hands off the sticks, Bruce, and you saw it just sort of sit there, what did you think?
First of all, I was relieved, because I thought, if I faint from excitement, it's not going to go away. So I was going to keep flying. But also, the other thing I think it was also interesting in terms of just the backup to not let you screw up is also the way that the drone reminds you of your own human weaknesses. I mean, one thing I learned right away is depth perception is gone. I mean, if you think you know where the drone is vis-a-vis a clump of trees, you have no idea what you're, and also height. I was, again, there was a clump of trees at the end, and I was very, very, wary of not flying the thing into the trees. And so I took it up, higher than I thought they were. And of course, when I got it close enough to the trees that, when my drone compensated for my lack of depth perception, I realized I was like, twice as high as the nearest treetop. So there's that too. It's just you not only get an immediate appreciation of how powerful the technology is, but also just how much it can fill the void of your own human, lack of your frailties or your lapses. And frankly, when I got done after 3 30-minute sessions with the batteries, I just kind of brought down. I just thought, is there anything humans will not figure out how to do with technology? Because I mean, I realize this thing won't do open heart surgery, and it can't fly across the Atlantic yet. And that's the way I felt about it when I came home. I said, yet, but it may well do before my time on this earth is done.
It's funny when you were talking about the trees and the fact that sometimes it can be difficult to really figure out exactly where you are, especially once it's still within line of sight, but once it's away from you a little bit. We posted a story yesterday that linked to a video by Ken Herron, who is a very popular influencer on YouTube and an excellent drone reviewer, and he pulled together all of these different crash videos. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because when I watched the video and I looked at a number of the crashes, they were entirely avoidable. But what had happened in some of them was either what you were just describing, that you lose this perception of exactly how close you might be to something. And the other thing that I saw several examples of is something called target fixation. So you're flying along your drone and there's a pole in the way, and you're looking at the pole and you start thinking, oh my God, I don't want to hit the pole. I don't want to hit the pole. I don't want to hit the pole. And you get closer and closer and closer. And sure enough, you hit the pole. And as a brief aside, when I was a teenager, I took hang gliding lessons from a guy who was not a terribly good instructor. And he sort of approved me after a couple of short hops. He said, yeah, you can go off this great big hill. And it was a super windy day. I took off, and it was a skiing hill. It was in the summertime, but it was a ski hill. And there was a night skiing pole. So a pole with a light on it for night skiing. And it was like 30 or 40 feet high. So I took off, and all of a sudden, I was heading for the pole. I was heading right for the top of the pole. And I'm trying to turn, and it's like I forgot everything about how to control a hang glider using my weight. And suddenly I realized I'm going to hit this pole. And I'm strapped into, I'm lying in a prone position, and all I could think of to do was to get my legs out and try to kick the top of the pole, put my feet out in advance and try to glance off the pole, thinking somehow I would be able to keep flying. And boom, I went straight to the ground. And you might think, you know, that a kite would just flutter down like a butterfly. It dropped like a stone. And I was very, very fortunate. The force of the impact actually bent the frame of that triangular control bar because my back landed on it. So it absorbed some of the shock, but I was in terrible, terrible pain. And I did fly one other time after that. But yeah, so I know all about target fixation. One other story I wanted to touch on that we had on Drone DJ, and thanks Rashid, who says, I love DJI. Appreciate people and their comments on here. One of the stories we had this week that intrigued me was that we had another drone light show in China where some of the drones came down out of the sky. Now, the one about a month ago, they literally dropped from the sky. You know, quite a number of drones just started falling to the ground and into the water, and you can actually hear it on the video. You can hear the impact as they land. We'd never seen this before. And now we see a second one within a relatively short period of time where these drones started actually floating down as if they were in an auto land procedure, and people in the crowd reaching up and actually grabbing them. Now, I can't imagine that anyone who is putting on a drone show would deliberately do this. So it's got to make you wonder, is this a technical failure? Is this sort of competition, which is very rife in China, and someone interfering with the command and control signal? We don't really have a way of knowing, so I'm not going to, you know, suggest that it was one or the other because we really don't know. However, it's worth noting that in the space of 1 month, after seeing so many flawless drone shows in China, we have 2 in a very short period of time where there have been incidents. Bruce, you have a story up today from Australia. Tell us about it. I just saw the video before we got online, and it's pretty intriguing.
Yeah, it's basically just the guy who lives at Bondi Beach, and apparently condominium, flew his Mavic to zoomed as he does frequently to overfly the nearby beach and water, and early into the flight he sees that there's a guy out there, a spear fisherman, jousting with a shark, and he sees the shark and he sees the spear fisherman fending it off with his spear, and he calls the cops, and obviously with another phone because he's controlling, but he has a presence of mind to call the cops. Sorry, not the cops, the lifeguards. Send them out and keep filming, because you know what can he do and otherwise. And so he just keeps filming. So there's apparently 30 full minutes of this video. I've only seen a minute and a half extract, but it's really quite amazing, and it shows you again how. You know, 2 different presence of minds. The fisherman, the diver, able to keep this creature at bay, who's very excited and animated, and he's the shark is described as angry, but he's thrashing around quite a bit, and the diver, you know, doing what he has to just keep it away, and then this drone pilot just getting it all down for posterity. It's kind of amazing. Think of the odds of that drone flying over at that time.
And of course, some of you will be aware who are watching, the drones are now routinely used at many beaches around the world by lifeguards, both to monitor, to go look for sharks, and just to keep an eye in the sky in case people run into trouble as they're further out in the water. And hopefully, Ishvina, in India, now that we have this regulatory change, we might be able to see those sorts of applications of drones put to use there in the future. All right, we're gonna wrap it up here in a sec. Is there anything else either of you would like to add as kind of final comments, Ishvina?
I'm good.
Yeah,
But
and
we will
Bruce?
be looking forward to the final changes in the India's regulatory process. And of course, on the note of drones being used for beach patrol, drones are also agencies like Royal Navy are also trying out drones that can carry a life vest or a life buoy. to the location where somebody may be droning. So that's another application where they can be useful.
Bruce, you're a surfer. Have you ever seen drones out there when you're surfing, either just to capture footage or to keep an eye on people on the beach?
I have in the past, but to be honest with you, I don't think they were legally present. As I say, this is very tightly controlled out here, and even in the few zones around here where it is yellow rather than red, nearby where I live, you cannot overfly people who haven't given their permission to be in proximity of a drone with a camera on it. So over the beaches, you would have essentially been prohibited from doing so, which is why this weekend when I take the Mini 2 out again, I'll be going out between the cornfields and the soy crops, where nobody will complain about the camera on it.
Well, thanks, everyone. I suspect we're going to be hearing more still this week, and watch later today on Drone DJ for Ishvina's update on the Financial Times story and the fallout around the blue sUAS and the pushback around that Department of Interior memo. Bruce Crumley, Ishvina Singh, both senior editors at Drone DJ, thank you so much for joining me. I'm Scott Simi. We're going to sign off in a second, but just a reminder that we are going to do this panel regularly every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. So please mark that on your calendars or pop back later on and watch it on YouTube. And certainly we're happy to take live questions. None came in today other than a couple of hellos and I love DJI. But please feel free to interact as we do these. Drop us a question, and if we know the answer, we'll tell you. And if we don't know the answer, we'll find out and either add it to the comments or let you know in a future broadcast. So thanks very much. I'm Scott Simi, editor-in-chief of DroneDJ.com. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.